This is Ashley Hodge with the Sikkim 365 podcast brought to you by Syntex Bookkeeping for all your payroll, accounting, and bookkeeping needs. Syntex Bookkeeping is your source. I'm joined by Grayson Grundhoefer, and we're going to talk about the matchup between Baylor and Villanova in the Sweet 16. And then we're also going to get into picks for the Sweet 16 matchups. And then we're going to talk about some coaching news. There's been some chaos in the coaching world, and certainly the OU job coming open, the Texas job now looks like it's going to come open. So we'll talk about that news at the end of the podcast. Grayson, how you doing? Are you feeling excited about this matchup between Villanova and Baylor tomorrow?
I mean, it's the best time of the year. It's March. And, we got to see the first round, which is always my favorite just because of the chaos. And it happened again
so
this
many
year.
Games, right?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm excited for this weekend. It's the more serious games, where the pressure, it just feels like you can feel it
right
all over the place from every team. So it's going to be fun. I'm excited. Scott Drew versus Jay Wright. I mean, that's just – who could have painted a better matchup for Baylor to try to get to an Elite Eight and just, trying to get that path to the Final Four going through Jay Wright. That's pretty fitting. So I'm excited for the matchup, excited for all of the matchups, really. I mean, a lot of the brackets are very weird, the Midwest especially. So it's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, it will be. Well, let's talk about the Villanova-Baylor matchup first. Villanova has looked impressive the first two rounds, really the second round more than the first game against Winthrop. A lot of people picked Winthrop to win that game because Villanova was coming in on a down note after losing Colin Gillespie. They lost to Providence. They lost to Georgetown before the NCAA tournament, but then they took care of Winthrop. I think they beat them by double digits, didn't they? It was
10.
10 points, okay. And then they looked really impressive after getting behind to North Texas. I think they went on like a 32-6 run. They rained threes from the sky, were 15 for 30 from the game. And really, North Texas had no answers for that. And they took care of business with relative ease against North Texas. So the question is, will Baylor's backcourt be able to frustrate a backcourt that doesn't have Colin Gillespie, their leader, their point guard? Villanova's got a lot of talent. These guys have been waiting their turn, and, some guys are coming off the bench and stepping up, playing some bigger roles. But, will they be ready for this big stage against Baylor's experienced backcourt? I think that's really the biggest question, don't you?
Yeah, I do. And the biggest key for me, if someone were to ask me what's the key to the game, it's Baylor's ability to pressure Villanova's guard. So it's kind of very similar to what you were saying. Through two games in the tournament, I believe they have 10 total turnovers. Yeah. So they've done a really good job of taking care of the basketball. Now, they haven't seen a defense like Baylor's with, Mark Vidal and Davion Mitchell and Jared Butler, who really frustrate ball handlers the way that they do. But, another kind of just key that people need to watch, and it really affected North Texas. North Texas has some good players, but they also have some small guards, just being honest. Hamlet had 20-something points, but I bet if you watch the film, he probably gave up 30 on the other end because Villanova has tall, long, lanky guards and guys who can shoot over smaller defenders. So I think a key for Baylor, run those guys off the three-point line and then just trust that, Flo Thamba or Everyday John or Mark Vidal can protect the rim enough that you're forcing them to take contested twos instead of those threes, which, as we saw, they can rain on you a little bit.
Yeah, and one thing Villanova does a really good job with, and even they did a good job with Colin Gillespie, is they post their guards up quite a bit. I mean, their footwork and their ball handling, their jab steps are elite. They do a good job of getting defenders out of position. They're one of the most enjoyable teams to watch, when you watch them play, because a lot of their baskets come from assist and not a lot of dribble drive penetration. So they move the ball really well. They're a great passing team. I noticed that Justin Moore in the North Texas game, he's just able to get in the post and post up those smaller guards. Now I think he's going to have more of a struggle doing that against Baylor's guys because Baylor has their smallest guys 6'2", and they are physical. Mitchell, Flagler, Butler, Teague, all really sound defenders. Obviously, Mitchell's one of the best defenders in the country. So I don't think Villanova is going to feast doing that against Baylor. And the key will be just making sure that, you know, Baylor does what they did the first 2 rounds, communicate well, make sure the rotations are sound. You know, they can't have guys daydreaming or ball watching. They've got to be locked in on defense, because the way Villanova moves that ball and gets you out of position, you know, they can make you look silly in a hurry. And we saw some of that after the COVID pause, you know, that Baylor got out of their defensive rotations, and, you know, against Kansas, against Oklahoma State, and even against West Virginia, a game they won. There were some, you know, too many open shots, too many uncontested looks, and Baylor can't allow that against Villanova if they want to advance.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. And, you know, if you look through kind of just going through some of the personnel of Villanova, two guys who I think there's probably 3, but 2 specifically that I think probably are going to give Baylor the biggest problems are, of course, Villanova's big man, Jeremiah Robinson Earl. Very, very good. You know, his scoring has been there in the tournament and his rebounding,
Right.
but you're seeing them use him a lot as kind of, you know, he's not quite, you know, Krutwig for Loyola, but he's going to pass the ball. They're going to run offense through him. He's going to find open guys. Just a very skilled big man, very fun to watch. So he's definitely one to keep an eye on. I think he could give Baylor some problems. But the one that I'm really nervous about, and I think this is going to be a big challenge for Mark Vidal, is Jermaine Samuels.
Yeah.
That guy has gotten better and better this year, and I just think 6'7", he's got great length, rebounds the ball well, shoots the 3-point ball well. I mean, just a very good player. He shoots 38% from 3.
Right.
You know, he's averaging 12 points and 6.5 rebounds and 2.5 assists, but in the tournament, he's been even better than that. So I like his game a lot, and a skilled wing with his size, I think he could attack the glass pretty well and give Baylor problems. And I mean, to be honest, if Mark Vidal got in foul trouble, you know, as much as I love Matthew Meyer, I would not like that matchup at all, him versus Samuels. So I think that's an interesting one to watch. Can they slow him down, and can they keep him off the glass and keep him from making a huge impact on the game?
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think the 2 guys for me that will determine Villanova's ability to make this a competitive game late and possibly beat Baylor are, you know, Samuels that you mentioned, and also Cole Swider. I think those 2 guys, having those, you know, 6'7", 6'8" guys on the wings that can knock down threes, can drive it a little bit. You know, Samuel's a lot better than Swider at that, but Swider is capable of driving it to the hole and scoring as well. You know, Sadiq Bey gave Baylor some problems last year. And, you know, I think you're right. Those 2 guys are the guys that you got to really be concerned about. You know what? So I watched the Villanova podcast, and it was pretty good. They were talking about the Baylor matchup, but their knowledge of Baylor history and trivia was pathetic. So I'm going to quiz you on Villanova here. All right. So let's name 5 players that played for Villanova that aren't on this current team. We'll see how you do.
Man, I'm a basketball fan. What are you doing? This is and I get to name some of my favorites because I've liked Nova for a while. So
yeah,
the team back in the day when they had Randy Foy, and I'm probably gonna get this wrong, but I think his name was Alan Ray. Those were kind of their two staples.
Yep.
You know, I mean Jalen Brunson,
right.
You know, Amari Spellman, Mikal Bridges.
Okay, that's 5. So now we're going to see if I can name 5 more. So obviously you got Jalen Brunson.
I said Brunson. You got to dig deeper.
Okay. Jason Hart. We've got Kyle Lowry. Oh boy.
You got this.
Obviously DiVincenzo on that national championship team as well. Chris Jenkins. So that's 4. So I need to name 1 more.
Come on. There's a big one that led them far in the tournament.
I'm going to go old school with you. Ed Pickney, back in the 80s. I watched them beat Georgetown. I was a Georgetown hater. I grew up in the DC area, and I was a big Maryland Terps fan. So I always rooted for anyone that played Georgetown. So I was happy to see Villanova win that national championship with Rollie Mouse.
Did Scotty Reynolds go to Nova?
Yep, Scotty Reynolds
Okay.
was on. Yeah, he was later, but yeah, that
He
definitely.
carried them far, I remember.
Yeah, yeah, they got a lot of history. Obviously, Jay Wright has won 2 of the last 4 national championships, so massive respect. I think really a lot of the things that Baylor and Scott Drew have tried to do is emulate. The most sincere form of flattery is imitation. They tried to imitate some of the things that Jay Wright's done, that Tony Bennett's done at Virginia. Obviously, Mark Few at Gonzaga. John Jacobs would say this on a podcast with us. He would say the smart take from the strong. If you see somebody that's doing something well, and you're going to be like, I want to copy that. And culture building. Staying old, getting people to buy into the Villanova way. I mean, this is why this program is one of the best programs in college basketball. But that being said, they don't have Colin Gillespie. Baylor's got an experienced team that beat them last year by 8 points, 7 points. I can't remember, 8 or 9 points. Terrific game. One of the best games in college basketball last year. And that was with, Villanova had Gillespie. They had Sadiq Bey. And so, Baylor comes in. They're a year older. Villanova's core is a year older. They were both supposed to be top 5 teams. They were supposed to play in that, Mohegan Sun tournament. But the Villanova director of health was worried that Scott Drew got the virus. And even though he was staying at home, they were worried that he had been spreading it to his team. And that turned out to not be a significant worry at the time. Obviously, COVID ravaged the Bears in February, but they didn't have any problems back then. But anyway, it's I think Baylor would love to see, are they, if you're going to win national championship, you're going to have to beat teams like Villanova, teams like Arkansas. You're going to have to play these heavyweight teams, and I think the Bears are up for the challenge.
Yeah, and I know everyone brings up the game last year, and I know you were talking about Sadiq Bey. I don't think people realize how good that guy is. I mean, he had a 30-point game in the NBA as a rookie. I mean, they're missing a big piece of the puzzle, along with Gillespie, of course. I mean, they don't have anyone on this team as good as Sadiq Bey, currently.
And Baylor doesn't have Freddie Gillespie, who was, obviously an important part of their team last year.
Yeah, for sure. But you're getting Davion Mitchell, who we talked about today, at a epically higher clip than they had him last year. So
right.
It's just an interesting matchup and all. You mentioned Cole Swider. He's a guy that scares me, and I have no idea on earth why he only averages 6 points a game. I mean, because you see this guy stroll out there and start shooting threes at 6'9", and I'm sitting there thinking, man, every time he shoots, I think the ball's going in the basket. So he scares me a little bit. But yeah, I think ultimately the issue that Villanova is going to run into is I don't know that their guards can guard Baylor's guards. I mean, this Arcidiacono is not the Arcidiacono from 4 years ago, Ryan, who was just an all-time great Nova guy, won a national championship. He's not him, and I think Baylor's going to expose him a little bit. I think the other guards on Villanova's team they're just not quite as good as Butler and Mitchell, and I think it's going to give them some trouble. And also, Jeremiah Robinson-Earl is a very good big, but I don't consider him an elite rim protector by any means. No. So I do think that Baylor's going to have some success getting into the lane, and if they can start knocking down their floaters again, which they were doing for a large part of the year, that would be huge. And I think they'll score too much for Nova to end up, being too close in this game. I think it'll probably be somewhere between 7 and 10 points. But I like the Bears.
Yeah, well, I think the Bears need to score 75 points because Nova's offense is too good to keep under 70. I wouldn't feel confident keeping it under 70. The Bears can do it, if they lock in defensively, but I wouldn't want to rest my laurels on that. I think that the question is, as good as Colin Gillespie was, and I think he's a solid defender, but some of the advanced stats say he was the worst defender on their starting 5. Are they better defensively? Because now they've got Samuels, they got Daniels, they've got Slater, they've got Brian Antoine, they've got Justin Moore. Obviously, They may be better defensively because they got these interchangeable 6'4" to 6'8" guys. Samuels. I don't know if I mentioned Samuels, but they can throw at you in the mix. So that they played really well defensively against North Texas. Now it's North Texas. Love Grant McCaslin, but there's a reason they weren't top 50 Ken Palm. Coming into that game, obviously knocked off your Purdue Boilermakers, which was a great upset. But if they played 10 games, Purdue is probably going to win 9 of those. I mean, let's be honest here.
I don't know, man. Watching that game, I don't know. I'm serious. Like, watching the game, I just felt like North Texas was just better. And it really was unfortunate. But all that saying, I've always thought Purdue was a year away.
Right.
I think Jaden Ivey's going to be an NBA guy. They get Williams back. So, right. I mean, credit to them. I thought they were just the better team. That game really shouldn't have gone to overtime. So, they were a good team. But you're right. Nova's played Winthrop and North Texas up to this point to get to the Sweet 16. And, I listened to the Island College Basketball podcast, and they talk about how, you don't apologize for getting to the Sweet 16. You don't apologize, and I agree, but they still haven't been tested. I looked at their schedule. They haven't played anyone the caliber of Baylor.
Yeah.
All year.
The Aggies used to love to point out that Baylor's Elite Eight runs all were predicated on not beating a single-digit seed. I think the year that they went to the first Elite Eight, there were some upsets, and one of them was St. Mary's beating Villanova, and then who they play. That was the Sweet 16 game, but to get there, they beat Sam Houston State, and then there was an upset. Old Dominion, the 10 seed or the 11 seed beat the 6. I can't remember exactly what it was. But anyway, to your point, and then the next time they played Xavier, they played Colorado, they played South Dakota State. So it was all double-digit seeds, similar deal. They had some upsets in there, but hey, you have no control over that, right? Villanova just plays the teams that it's not their fault Purdue didn't win and that they didn't have a tougher game on paper. So what's your prediction? What do you think the score is going to be of this game at the end?
Yeah, so I think there's a chance that it's close late in the game, but I think ultimately the Bears pull away a little bit, make some free throws late in the game. I think ultimately I'm probably going to pick them by 9. So I think the score that I'm kind of going with is something like 78-69, something along those lines.
I've got a 9-point spread as well. I've got Baylor 84, Villanova 75. And I made the rash decision yesterday to head to Indianapolis, so I will be there in person in Hinkle
this weekend.
Yeah.
Wow.
From a fan perspective, I'm not pulling a media pass. I don't think there will be any available if I try to, but I'm going to be sitting with Baylor fans, and I was actually pretty surprised. Now I've heard today is a totally different situation, but yesterday I got a one-way ticket, so I just did a one-way flight for $237 from Dallas to Indianapolis. Reasonable. And so I'm going to stay. And, obviously if Baylor loses, I'm going to try to find a flight home. But if they win, I'll stay through Monday. And
you're just going to stay up there all week?
Well, through Monday, through the Elite Eight game.
Yeah.
Then I'll fly back, and then I'll come back for the Final Four. I'm definitely.
I was like, you're going to stay the whole week for the Final Four and everything.
I thought about it, but if I did that, I would probably drive and have enough clothing and stuff to make it work. If just a flight, you can't. The airlines will charge you $500 if you.
It's my home city, Ashley. You're
Indianapolis?
Going to my home city. Yep.
Oh, I need some tips. I need some tips from you then. We'll have to talk off air about that.
Okay.
All right. So let's talk about the Sweet 16 matchups. Who do you have in these other matchups? I've got some thoughts, but I want to hear yours first. And we need to keep track. So I know I smoked you pretty good. I think the last time we did these matchup previews, but I'm sure you've already forgotten about what the results were of those matchups. But I need you to keep track of these Sweet 16 games.
Okay. All
right. So we obviously both think Baylor's going to beat Villanova. Oregon State, Loyola, Chicago. Who are you rolling with there?
I keep hearing this, and I agree with it. I think Loyola Chicago was very underseeded, and they've proven it. I mean, that's just a veteran team that knows how to play basketball. And Oregon State's rolling, but I think they're running into a bit of a buzzsaw. I got Loyola winning that one.
Yeah, me too. I think it's going to be a double-digit win. I can't believe Oregon State got to the Sweet 16. Oklahoma State played about as bad as they could have played in that game, and I mean, they deserve to lose based on the shots they were taking and just how ridiculous, their offensive flow was. But I agree
Do
with
you
you.
listen to the Eye on College Basketball
Oh yeah.
podcast?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so they mentioned one of the guys talked about how he talked to Mike Boynton,
Yeah.
the head coach for Oklahoma State.
Right.
And he said if you watch their film back in the early part of the season
Right.
and then watched it now, it is two completely different teams. And he said he's never seen anything like it.
Oh, Oregon State?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's pretty crazy. I mean, they have gotten a lot better and they're on a roll right now, but that magic, I think, is going to end. I don't think Loyola is playing with magic. I think they're just that good. Oregon State, on the other hand, I'm not sure is that good.
Yeah, when I watched the Loyola Illinois game, and Brent Wilson, actually, we talked about this before the Baylor Wisconsin game, but he said, if they had played 10 times, I think Loyola may have won eight of those. I mean, they were just the better team, and they were more disciplined, and they just had just a lot more structure than Illinois did. And I've always been an Illinois doubter throughout the season, so I wasn't real surprised by that outcome. I hadn't picked them I didn't think they would make it out of that bracket. I think I picked was Texas in their bracket?
No, I took West Virginia in that bracket.
Oh, I took Houston.
Houston. Yeah.
All right, Oral Roberts, Arkansas. Who's your winner there?
I am not an Arkansas believer at all.
Ooh,
at all.
Upset pick.
I don't think they're that good.
Yeah.
I really don't. Issue is Oral Roberts has two guys, but you know what? I'm gonna roll with it, and I think
I love it.
I'm gonna roll with it. I just think Matt Abesmith, that guy, is just. I mean, he is a scorer. He can get to the rim. He can shoot the three. If he's cooking and O'Banner's cooking, I mean, they are tough to stop. They can really do some things to complicate you. And honestly, after watching Arkansas play Texas Tech, I just was not impressed at all with that team. And I think they're primed for an upset. I'm going to take Oral Roberts, and I'm not super confident in it. I could see them, definitely losing this game for sure, but I don't think it'll be like the Florida Gulf Coast game, which was the last 15 seed to make it this far. They lost by double digits. I think Oral Roberts will be ready for this matchup, and I'm hoping to see a little more magic. I think that would be a really cool story.
I love it, and I hope you're right. I love Oral Roberts. I love Paul Mills and Sam Patterson. I think those guys are great, but I got to pick Arkansas. I think Arkansas is just going to wear them down. They play good defense. They're not a good three-point shooting team, so if Oral Roberts can pack it in, play some zone, make Arkansas make threes, I think they got a good shot, but I'm going to pick Arkansas. Syracuse, Houston. What do you have there?
I'm hedging my bet a little bit with the Oral Roberts pick, and I'm going with another upset. I'm going with Syracuse in this one, and I mentioned it today in our article on the website, but the Buddy Boeheim, Jim Boeheim connection, that has been such a cool story to see. Yep. And Buddy is playing out of his mind right now. I mean, he's playing so well, and it's just been fun to watch. And, they beat West Virginia, who in my opinion is better than Houston. Only issue is Houston offensive rebounds the ball extremely well, which is a problem when you're running a 2-3 zone.
Yep.
So I do understand that. Kelvin Sampson's a great coach, but give me Jim Boeheim as a double-digit seed. He's 9-2. He's going to keep that rolling and get his 10th win as a double-digit seed. So I got the Qs.
I love it. I would say if this was a short turnaround and Houston hadn't had all week to prepare for that zone, I would agree with you that Syracuse would win this game. But with the week to prepare, give me Kelvin Sampson and Houston to advance. So I'm going to pick the Houston Cougars.
So you're just going chalk, huh?
Well, I do have an upset coming, but all right. So Creighton and Gonzaga. What's your thought on that? Gonzaga?
We can zoom by this one. This is not going to be close.
I think it's going to be a closer game than you think. I say Gonzaga wins, but they win by single digits. But
they have all week to prepare for Creighton, and Creighton's never been there before, and I don't see it. I think Gonzaga will be challenged more in the Elite Eight game.
Yeah,
than in this one.
I agree with that. All right, Michigan and Florida State.
Upset pick.
You're going Florida.
Another one.
Yeah.
I got Florida State. I have Florida State going to the Final Four, or at least I did before the bracket. A little nervous about that, the way Alabama's playing.
Right.
But I'm going to go with Florida State. I think their length and their size and they're just a good team. And Leonard Hamilton's got those guys playing really hard. So I'll go with the Seminoles.
I'm going to go Michigan. It's not much of an upset pick because of Livers being out. But I think Michigan shoots the three really well. Florida State plays in the ACC. Last time I checked, Grayson, the ACC is terrible, although they did get 2 Sweet 16 teams.
I was going to say, how many Sweet 16 teams do the Big 10 and Big 12 have?
The same amount combined.
Yeah.
But no, Florida State is they're the trendy pick. Almost everybody's picking them. So I'm going to stick with Michigan. UCLA, Alabama. Who do we got there?
Again, don't have to spend too much time on this. Alabama's going to run them out of the gym. I like Alabama. I like the way
6.5 point spread. I mean, you got to Vegas knows what they're doing.
Not in this one.
You're talking about Mick Cronin here.
I'm taking the over. Give me all the Bama shares in that one. This game will be double digits for sure. Bama's explosive. They go on runs. They got good athletes. And UCLA hasn't played anyone. And they're another team. They haven't played anybody.
Bama uses the analytics well, much like Villanova. Not many mid-range jumpers. They're going to get shots at the rim. They're going to take shots from three. But Bama's not the best three-point shooting team in the world. They, I think they're kind of middle of the pack as far as the teams that are left. Maybe even towards the bottom as far as three-point percentage. So I think that's going to be a tougher game than you think. But I'm going to take Alabama. And then I'm going to pick Oregon over USC. Not a big upset, but I think Dana Altman is a terrific coach. I think they're healthy now. I think that Oregon is going to take care of the Trojans. I think the Trojans are going to come off that 35, 50, 75, 100-point blowout, whatever it was against Kansas. I mean, I think they're going to come in a little – feeling good about themselves, a little complacent, thinking this might be an easier game than it will be. And I think Oregon's going to beat them and maybe even beat them by double digits. So I'm going with the Ducks there.
See, I've been telling everyone all week that I think Oregon's going to win this game.
Okay.
And I really, but as the week's gone on, it's just tough. It's becoming a tougher pick for me. I know USC beat Oregon earlier this year by 14. Both teams coming off really dominant performances over teams that were, probably a little overseeded. I think everyone saw it coming, both of Iowa and Kansas losing pretty early in this tournament. So I'm struggling here because I also think USC is the best player on the court with Mobley.
Yeah.
Oh man, Oregon's playing really well. I got to roll with it. I've been saying it all week. So I think I have to stick with Oregon. Just because of the simple fact as a team, I think they have more options to go to.
Yeah.
USC's got the Mobley brothers. They're awesome. They're playing really well. But I think Oregon's going to score a lot. I think this is going to be a high-scoring game. I think the winner's going to score 80-something points, maybe 90 points. It should be pretty fun and fast-paced.
I mean, the thing about Oregon is they have 5 guys that average double figures, and they've had some injury problems. Obviously, Will Richardson, Davion Mitchell's backcourt mate in high school is healthy now, and I think that they will certainly be a challenge for USC. I was trying to see what the regular season held for those two teams.
What do you mean?
As far as what the matchups were. Okay, one game got canceled. Oregon lost to USC 73
by
to
14.
58. And that's and then that was the only time they played, right?
Yeah.
Ooh, that's even more reason to pick Oregon. Yeah. I mean, they're going to be hungrier. USC is going to be like, man, we just beat Kansas by 77 points. We beat, Oregon by 14 points in the regular season. This is going to be easy. Let's start thinking about Gonzaga. That's exactly the mentality those guys are going to have. No question about it. All right. But I feel good about the Ducks. All right. So let's talk about coaching changes.
Wait, are we going to roll through the Elite Eight since we're not, or are we going to be able to do one before then?
Ooh,
We will on
I'll be
Sunday,
in
maybe.
Indianapolis. Okay, let's go ahead and pick our Final Four.
You want to? Okay.
Yeah. I think Gonzaga is going to come out of that region. They're going to you have them beating Oregon, right?
Yep.
I do too. All right, so then we got Michigan, or you got Florida State and Alabama. I've got Michigan, Alabama. Who do you have surviving there?
You know what? I put Florida State in the Final Four with the reason being that I did think that they were probably going to play someone other than Bama. I had Bama losing a little earlier than this. I like this Bama team right now. They're playing well, and I don't really trust Leonard Hamilton at this point, even though I picked them to make Final Four. At some point I think he's going to get out coached a little bit, and honestly, he out coaches himself sometimes with how many guys he throws in there. Like he does 5-for-5 subs. Like he just subs too much. Like who's your star player? Right. Why aren't you riding your star player? I just think Bama's well coached, and I think they're going to win that game. So I got Bama.
Well, I picked Bama originally, but I'm gonna say Michigan gets the job done, and Michigan, I think adjusting to the injury to Livers, and I think they impressed me the other day, and I think they're going to win this game. So I'm going to pick Michigan. So Michigan in the Final Four, and Gonzaga. You've got Alabama, Gonzaga. And then if we go back to the winners of the Saturday matchup, we've got Baylor, and you've got them playing Oral Roberts. I'm assuming you're taking the Bears. I'm taking the Bears versus Arkansas. Is that what we got?
I don't care who Baylor plays. I think they're beating whoever they play in the Elite Eight.
I think the Elite Eight game is going to be easier than this matchup versus Villanova. And then we both have Loyola Chicago winning, and you've got them against Syracuse. I got them against Houston. I've got Houston surviving that game that's going to be in the 40s, probably going to be one of the worst Elite Eight games in the history of college basketball. But I have Houston surviving that. Who do you have against Loyola Chicago and Syracuse?
This one's tough for me. Both these teams, if they both win, they're just both on these hot streaks.
Yeah.
But I think at the end of the day, I got to go with Loyola Chicago. I think they're going to have the best player on the court with Krutwig, who's been there before. And I just think their defense will lock in. And I think Loyola Chicago is who Baylor would play in the Final Four, which is pretty interesting.
That is an interesting matchup. Either one, if it's Houston or Loyola Chicago, that's going to be a tough matchup for the Bears. I mean, it's going to be like playing Texas Tech, which the Bears beat them twice pretty easily, but it's never pretty. Well, actually, the game in Waco was pretty. That was beautiful, but the game in Lubbock wasn't pretty. It was kind of a ugly game for most of the game. Well, so all right, let's talk about coaching real quick. And we got the Oklahoma job that's open. We've got the Texas job that's now being reported open. That Shaka Smart's taking a soft landing to Marquette. I would probably go on record and say that Texas was more than glad to waive that buyout and say sayonara to Shaka. So who fills these jobs? I mean, who do you think? What Oklahoma job? You got any thoughts on who you think is going to take that job?
I've heard names. I've heard multiple names. I mean, if I'm a school, I would really like to go get Porter Moser from Loyola. I just think culturally, I think he's a good builder. I mean, 2 Final Fours. Yes, you might tie him into, Shaka Smart did that. Or, Jim Larinaga at George Mason was right. That was Jim.
Yeah. Jim Larinaga, yeah.
And he didn't do much after that. So I know there's connections there, but I would try to get him. I know there's other names. Mark Turgeon would be an interesting fit at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Outside of that, though, I don't know that they're taking any of these big names. Like, I don't think they're going and taking like Nate Oates from Bama or Musselman from Arkansas. I don't think they're that kind of level of program where they're going to be able to do something like that.
Yeah, I agree with you. The other name that I think, the 2 Baylor guys might get a hard look, Paul Mills and Grant McCaslin. I think those guys, and I actually think Grant McCaslin will get a lot of consideration for Texas Tech. If Chris Beard goes to Texas, I think McCaslin makes sense because of his West Texas ties and having so much success in Midland. I think that, he could be considered for the Texas Tech job, which may open up an opportunity for Coach Tang, to take one of those jobs that's vacated. I think Jerome Tang is going to get a great job, somewhere, and maybe a big job, maybe a Power 5 job, but usually the progression is you take a mid-major job first and you have success at a mid-major, and then you get, the Power 5 job.
Do you think both of those coaches, Mills and McCasland, get a job this year? If you had to bet, I think they both do. But
I think they both do too. You don't ever underestimate the value of a Sweet 16 run. I mean, that is big. And
look at Chris Beard.
Yeah, exactly. So many coaches have catapulted that into a big job. So I think Mills could definitely, be viewed in a positive light for one of these Power 5 jobs. I will say that, just trying to be objective, if you look at McCasland, what he's done, the fact that he's won, conference championships at other places besides North Texas, that he's won a JUCO national championship. I mean, I think that's the safer pick, for someone looking for a head coach, because he's had a track record of success that's been proven. But I'm rooting for him if they want to leave. I mean, Paul Mills, he may be a guy that wants to stay at Oral Roberts. I mean, faith is, important to both of those guys, but Paul, I think especially, is kind of built for a school that has the Christian commitment. But I don't know. I mean, those are my thoughts. I think both of them would be terrific elsewhere if they decide they want to leave, and I think it opens up a spot for Jerome Tang. I think if Tang leaves, Jared Nunes would be the logical pick, to take that third assistant job at Baylor. And I wouldn't just totally rule out, Jacobs and Alvin Brooks getting looks as well. I mean, there's going to be a lot of chaos in the coaching ranks, and what Baylor's done is so impressive that I think other schools are going to say, hey, let's go do what Baylor did. We can't pry Scott Drew away, but let's get some of that magic. And you've seen these big schools like your boys at Duke. Their coaching tree has failed miserably. I mean, in the big scheme of things, although they've been set up in good jobs, and maybe that's not the formula. Maybe it's taking guys from Gonzaga, from Villanova, from Baylor, places that are harder to win, don't have the inherent advantages, and taking those assistants, because that's what you're going to need, to build these cultures at some of these programs. So just a thought, I think it could be a very bullish market for Baylor assistants, especially if they win a national championship, obviously.
Yeah, I could definitely see that. I mean, Paul Mills is a good one. I mean, Sweet 16 run with 15 seed. I think you got to go while it's hot.
Well, yeah. Look at the guy at USC. I mean, the names. Help me out. The coach at USC.
Yeah. Andy Enfield.
Andy Enfield. Yeah. Yeah. We kind of associate him with his wife more than the coach himself.
Yeah.
Got so much attention during that Sweet 16 run. But I mean, that's a perfect example. Florida Gulf Coast Sweet 16 run, boom, USC job.
Yep.
So it happens all the time. So I wouldn't be surprised if Paul, got one of those opportunities. All right, Texas. Texas. I've heard Royal Ivy's name. I think Beeline's name is one that's interesting. Oh, the other one that I would throw out for Oklahoma is Dana Altman. And
wow,
I won't go too much into detail, but I've got an inside source on this. I know that Altman, Kruger, the coach at Washburn, golf together every year. There's definitely this, like, in the off season, there's definitely these Midwestern values that these guys have. I think there's a little bit of worry, maybe things are getting a little crazy on the left coast, type of mindset with some of these coaches. I kind of put Mark Few in that, but Gonzaga is a private school. I don't see him leaving at all. But I do think, Dana Altman's one that could be plucked, and I think he's 62, so he's not that much younger than Kruger.
Right.
But if OU just wanted to kind of steady the ship for a few years, that might be a name to keep in mind, because I wouldn't be surprised if he wants to return to the Midwest to finish.
That'd be crazy.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. All right. So Texas, Royal Ivy, Beeline, Chris Beard. Do you think Beard is the guy that they target?
They have to. I
Yeah.
mean, they tried last time, and it's hard because Tech has. I mean, for as much as grief we want to give Tech, they have really prioritized Chris Beard. They've paid him the money. They've done everything they can.
In basketball, they've
Yeah,
prioritized
in basketball.
Yeah.
To make him happy, and he's getting paid crazy good money right now. I mean, if Texas wanted to take him, they'd have to pay the $4 million buyout, and they'd probably have to pay him like a top 3 coach in the country, maybe top 5, in order to take him from Tech. He did go to Texas. Those were the rumors last time, but I just think they got to go all in at some point, and I think there's going to be a real hesitation from them to go out and take another mid-major coach. Even though I do think a guy like Porter Moser would be, like I said, I think he's going to be a great hire for someone.
I think Indiana makes sense for me. Either he stays at Loyola and becomes the Gonzaga of that conference, or I think he takes the Indiana job. To me, that makes the most sense.
Yeah, it does.
Chris Beard, Jeff Borzello is reporting while we're doing this podcast that his buyout's $4 million on April 1st, but after April 1st, it drops to $2 million for any school outside the Big 12.
There you go.
Okay. So I don't know about Big 12. Well, maybe
it'll be 4, I think.
Indiana for Chris Beard. I don't know. Chris Beard's a great coach. If I was hiring a coach, I would definitely take a long, hard look at him. I still contend that he is 18-18 and or 19-19 in Big 12 play the last 2 years, including the tournament. So
I would say that Tech's not the greatest, most awesome place to win basketball games, and it hasn't been that long that he's been there. And they did make a national championship and another Elite Eight. So
he didn't really capitalize on that. 19-19. I mean, got to the round of 32. That's an accomplishment. But it's not like that took him to the stratosphere, after that. So it's hard. I mean, it's like, you see Virginia win a national championship and then, lose in the first round in the next tournament. You see Villanova win national championship and then they lose in the first round. Then they win a national championship the next year. So it's not easy to do. Don't get me wrong.
Well, and for a school like Tech, you can't miss. Yeah. And they missed a lot the last 2 years. Like they just missed on guys,
transfer portal's been, kind of a mess. They've been kind of a revolving door, and it's recreating the roster all over again. Yeah. And now Kyler Edwards, I think, is going to leave. There's rumors he's going to transfer. So
Shannon's probably going to go to the league.
Shannon's going to leave. Yeah. So you're starting, from ground zero to some degree again.
All you have is McClung.
And McQuellar, who's a good player. I mean, it's a good. Okay.
He's a San Antonio boy. He's okay.
Usually you're like very positive on your San Antonio guys.
I know. He was kind of an afterthought on the team he played for. He was kind of the second guy behind. What was that dude's name?
You talking about it, Wagner?
Yeah.
Well, they had Tristan Clark on that team, but
right.
Oh, yeah. Tristan Clark was and then McQuellar, but McQuellar's a year younger,
2 years younger. There was another guy on that team that I'm trying to remember who it was.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank too.
Because Liddell was at Steele, but there was another guy. I'm drawing a blank, but I just didn't love his game. He had a good senior year, but
Liddell was at Steele. Wasn't Langston Levitt still also?
Yeah, they were on the same team for 1 year.
Yeah. Then Langston went to Montverde.
Yeah.
I'm excited about him. I'm excited about this incoming recruiting class, and they'll need him to be good.
They are going to be good. Yeah. They're going to be really good.
All right, we'll talk about Baylor roster issues after the season, but for now, we're locked in on that Sweet 16. I'll be there in Indianapolis to give you a feel for what it's like inside Hinkle Fieldhouse. Thank you for doing this podcast with me, Grayson. You've been listening to a Sick'em 365 podcast with Ashley Hodge and Grayson Grundhoefer. Sick'em Bears.